Welcome. This tutorial is going to explain the Pathfinder palette inside of Adobe Illustrator CS6. This tutorial will also cover the same uses for CS6 all the way through version CS. To get to the Pathfinder palette, go through the menu bar, window, and then down to the Pathfinder. It opens up this palette here. I'm going to move it off to the side here. The Pathfinder palette works off a shape, so I'm going to select my shape tool and I'm going to double click here and pick a nice bright color, and then click and draw a shape. You do need a minimum of 2 shapes, preferably different colors. I'm going to go ahead and click and hold and go to my ellipse tool, and then I'm going to draw a new ellipse. I'm going to pick my color first and click and drag now a new color. Now because I left the previous shape activated, it switched the color for that one. That one is no longer active. I'm going to double click here and switch now just the color of my ellipse so that they're 2 different colors. Now for the Pathfinder option. For the Pathfinder, we're going to deal with the shape modes. What you need to do is you need to have 2 overlapping shapes. 2 overlapping shapes. Once you get into 3, you're going to get an error. Okay? And if they're not overlapping, you will also get an error. You need to have 2 overlapping shapes. You need to select both of them. I'm using the selection tool and I'm just clicking and dragging to select both of them together. The very first mode is called Unite. And if you click, all of a sudden you'll see that it actually unites them together. Now I do want you to note that it did keep the color attributes of the foreground shape. So I'm going to click undo, Control Z or Command Z on the Mac. Notice that we do have that brownish orange color on the ellipse. And when I click unite, it unites it. We now only have 1 shape and we no longer have 2 shapes. Okay? And they both kept the color of the foreground shape. I'm going to undo that. The next one is minus the front. Okay, minus the front uses the foreground shape to punch a hole through the background shape. So if I deselect now, you see I cut a hole into that background shape, and notice that the foreground shape no longer exists. So if you unite, just so you know, you no longer have 2 shapes, you only have 1 shape. You have to undo. In other words, you can't re-separate them back out. When you punch a hole, minus the front shape is completely eliminated. The third one is intersect, and you can keep the intersection of the both of those shapes, and once again it does keep the color attributes of the foreground color. I'm going to undo again, and the last one is exclude. So it excludes the overlapping portions of both of those, and it's going to also keep the color attributes of the foreground shape. So that is the default uses for the Pathfinder. And if you hover above each one of these, you notice that there's an alt click to create a compound shape and add a shape to an area. So you can also experiment with the by holding down alt and then clicking with each one of these shapes. Thanks for watching. This is 5minutetutorials.com, and the best compliment you can always give us is by referring us to all your friends. Thank you.